Good evening. This is Dan Parsley. I'm president of angelMD. Thank you for joining us this evening. And you're in for a very, very interesting and uh, overview of one of the more exciting companies we've presented to our members. That is HealthPals, Silicon Valley based company. And we have their two co-founders here joining us this evening, as well as our syndicate leader, Dr. Uli Chetapalli, who is with Kaiser in their Northern California district. And I wanted to first just spend a few minutes introducing angelMD, and then I will ask Dr. Chetapalli to say a few words about his perspective on HealthPals, and which is extremely relevant given his position at Kaiser. And then we'll turn it over to Raj and Sushant to introduce themselves and the company. But first, a message from our attorneys. On the screen is a disclaimer that essentially reinforces the fact that we are not, angelMD is not an investment advisor, nor are we broker dealers. Anything that is shared this evening is to be verified and validated by your own due diligence should you choose to invest in this company. And we urge you to seek your own legal and investment advice. So just take a minute. So what is angelMD? angelMD is a technology investment platform in which we bring together early stage promising healthcare innovation companies like HealthPals, together with doctors, PhD, investors, and to help support these young emerging companies with advice and access, but very importantly, which is the purpose of this evening, is investment to provide the necessary capital to reach their next major milestones. Why invest in angelMD? And why invest in early stage or alternative investments in general? A lot of the investment theories will confirm the fact that having some of your investment portfolio exposed to what they describe as alternative investments can result in better overall investment returns for you. So a properly diversified portfolio would have some exposure to alternative investments, and we represent an alternative investment vehicle. When you look at early stage angel investing, there are some studies that would indicate some of the potential returns, and that is assuming that you are diversified. And our unique platform at angelMD, we provide the ease of diversification with how we're structured, which we'll review momentarily. But the results of the studies of angel investing do support the fact that if you're properly diversified, you should expect a very handsome, low to mid 20s in an internal rate of return, with about on average about 2.6 times your invested capital return in 3.5 years of investment hold period. Next. angelMD takes advantage of a new legal entity structure that is a special purpose vehicle. It is an LLC, but it allows for us to accept up to 99 investors. Because of that, we can aggregate numerous investors into a single special purpose vehicle that we would aggregate their collective investment into a direct investment into these early stage companies, so that we show up on their cap table as a single investor. That has great efficiencies for the early stage company. It allows us to invite accredited investors at a lower minimum of $10,000 minimum into our deals, and it allows our members of angelMD, of which we have nearly 9,000, to participate in multiple deals at that lower minimum. Next. So should you invest in HealthPals through the angelMD Syndicate or others, how do you get your money back? And certainly, there's no guarantee of a return, but should there be an exit and a profitable exit of HealthPals, that would be very likely in the form of a company acquisition. It's possible that it could be in the form of an IPO, but in this in this day and age, most wealth and most value is created through the acquisition of these young companies by the larger healthcare companies or technology companies. The fees involved in the angelMD structure are similar to how a typical venture capital fund would be structured, in which the investors would receive the return of their invested capital first, after which we're dealing with the profits of the investment, and of this profits of the investment, 85% would go to the investors, 10% of the profit would go to angelMD, and 5% would be split among the syndicate leaders like Dr. Chittapalli, who is joining us here this evening, is one of 4 syndicate leaders on this particular investment opportunity. This is a representative sample of the companies that we have successfully opened and closed syndicates for over the past 2.5 years, and we are looking forward to adding the HealthPals logo to this growing portfolio. So now let me turn it over to Dr. Uli Chittapalli and ask him to introduce himself and share a few words about his perspective on HealthPals. Uli?
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for letting me say a few words. My name is Uli Chittapalli. I'm an emergency physician and also a researcher at Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente, as some of you may know, is a large ACO, accountable care organization, or an integrated health system. We have the insurance company, the hospitals, and also the physician groups all rolled into one organization. My role there is I do research, and I've developed tools to be able to risk stratify and figure out ways to improve outcomes. And since, like many other value-based organizations, we stress prevention a lot. And I understand how prevention works. The idea is that if you put your efforts in prevention, you will reap the benefits in good outcomes in the future. Reduced heart attacks, reduced stroke, reduced cancers. So I've worked on several projects. My group is called CREST Network. If anybody's interested, we have 13 physician scientists, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer of that group. And over the last 10 years, we've done many research studies and developed technology tools to be able to predict what is going to happen to the patient. We published about 100 studies in that period. When I first, my other role outside of Kaiser is I run a group called Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. So this is a large international group of about 30,000 members, but here in the Bay Area, we have about 500-600 members. We meet once a month. I bring in startups, 2 or 3 each month, to present to the group, and we discuss, and some of them will raise investments, some of them will come to raise awareness. And that's how I met HealthPals about a year ago, or a little bit more than a year ago. And I've been, so they presented at our group, and since they're local and very close to where I live, I've been able to watch them and kind of see their growth and the way they changed over this past year and a half. When they approached me about investment, they asked me to help them raise money. I jumped at the opportunity because I felt that this company is at a very interesting point in their life. Their technology is incredible. If I were to start a company, I guess I would start something like this. And since I'm with my parent company, I cannot do that. But what I can do is I can invest in this company. That's when I decided that I should invest. Typically, I see about 100 companies every year as they come to me through this Society of Physician Entrepreneur group. And I invest in one or two in a year, mainly because obviously I don't have that much money, but also I'm very picky about what I invest in. And this is one of those companies that I'm investing this year. It has an incredible team, great clinician, great technologists, and they have made some tremendous progress over this year and a half that I've seen, and they will tell more about it. So I'm very happy with how it is being run and where they're going. So I'm very excited about it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Yuli. That's we're very fortunate to have your perspective, given the size and of the Kaiser Permanente valued healthcare system, and that perspective is really, I can tell you for me personally, hearing your perspective on it really moved me to invest. And you gave me a lot of confidence of the scale and the impact that this company will have based on your experience. So thank you for sharing that. Let me introduce Dr. Raj Dash and Sushant Shankar, who are the co-founders of HealthPals. And Raj, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Yuli, for that wonderful introduction. And also should say it's incredibly gratifying to get your support, particularly because you've also built digital health tools yourself, and your perspective has been immensely valuable. So thank you all for joining, and excited to talk to you about HealthPals. We are a precision prevention company, and I'm Raj Dash. I'm a cardiologist at Stanford. Faculty for 9 years, and I run a preventive clinic. My co-founder is Sushant Shankar. He'll talk a little bit later here. He is a data scientist, Berkeley and Stanford trained, and has been an entrepreneur and in startups in Silicon Valley for the better part of the last 10 years. And we're the co-founders of HealthPals. We have a tremendous team. You'll see our chief advisor is Bob Harrington. He's the current president of the American Heart Association, the chair of medicine at Stanford, and he also directed the Duke Clinical Research Institute and brought it to its current level of esteem, which is the preeminent clinical trial organization in the world. We also have Yogan Dalal, who was our first investor and a major advisor of ours. He used to head the Mayfield Fund and is the founder of Gluco, a leading diabetes software company. And we are VC backed at the seed stage by Ilisis Capital. So our vision is that HealthPals can prevent every chronic disease with the software platform we have built. And the way to do this is through something called precision prevention, which we can provide for the masses. So if you look at the solution, we have developed something called clinical intelligence, or CLINT for short. And you see some of our partners and customers at the bottom of the screen. The one that I'd like to highlight is the American College of Cardiology, which is the foremost authority on cardiovascular and metabolic disease, issuing the bulk of the guidelines governing these conditions, and also houses the largest cardiometabolic databases in the world. They have the Pinnacle and Diabetes Collaborative Registries, as well as the inpatient NCDR registries, upwards of 200 million patient life years of records. And HealthPals is now an official data partner and business partner of the American College of Cardiology. And by the end of this year, will be an accredited and licensed disseminator of their content and the first company to which they've designated this distinction. So we're excited by that. We'll talk more about that and some of our other customers in a moment. So the Rand Corporation 12 years ago published that 50% of all medical decisions are wrong or suboptimal based off available evidence. That's a big number, and the reason is that patient data is disconnected at the point of care from any sort of personalized matching into the guidelines of what should apply to them. And because there's only 8 to 10 minutes in the room with a patient anyways, the physician is usually focused on 1 or 2 chief complaints and doesn't have the time to give attention to the best evidence-based approaches for all of the chronic conditions a patient may have. And of course, the guidelines and evidence are changing every 2 to 3 years. We see new updates to the guidelines, and it's very difficult to keep up. The most recent example is the American Heart Association lowered the threshold for hypertension from 140 to 130 in November. It made 30% of Americans who used to be pre-hypertensive, hypertensive overnight. And trying to make that change in how they are managed clinically in your practice is extremely challenging. So what is this leading to? It's leading to bad outcomes, higher levels of stroke and heart attack, and higher mortality and cost. And we believe precision prevention is the way to fix those errors. HealthPals has developed a tool that provides an automated, personalized, and evidence-based decision support system for health systems and life science companies to get to better outcomes, lower mortality, and lower cost. So if you're a life science GM at a pharmaceutical company heading up cardiovascular, you can buy data. You can get data from the ACC and pay upwards of $3 million for that data, but you're not getting insights. Same thing for a chief medical officer or quality officer at a health system. It's not telling you how to make your patients better specifically with any granularity or evidence behind it. But Clint is taking that patient data, ingesting it into our platform. And our engine has codified all of the medical guidelines pertaining to patient care and produces 2 things particularly. The first is prescriptive. It's basically a checklist of all the guideline-driven recommendations that apply to each individual patient at that moment in time. And that checklist is then scaled with all the other checklists from all the other patients in that health system to produce an actionable evidence-based population management solution that can be dissected and disseminated by a life science GM or any chief quality or medical officer, and then sent to the rest of their team accordingly. It can also be pushed down to the point of care immediately, as we'll show you in a moment. And even more powerful is our data partnerships with the ACC allow us to take that 200 million patient life years of information and the machine learning that we've generated on it and actually optimize the individual treatments for one patient based off of thousands of patients just like them in our system. So we'll show you that in a moment. So the value to life sciences companies is 4-fold. We can show those companies an evidence-based value-focused prescribing pattern in their provider systems. We can improve the adoption of their class-leading drugs, a major challenge today. And we can, more importantly, perform virtual clinical trial design for them and choose the better endpoints for their clinical trials that they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on, and optimize their sales and marketing and targeting strategies. Next slide. So at its core, we are doing a cardiometabolic focused content, but we've spread significantly adjacent to that for what a primary care physician wants to see in terms of medical domains. But we also added ethnicity lenses to focus on high-risk populations, as well as social determinants of health, which we'll show you in the demo. So Shant, do you want to, oh, yeah, there we go. You should be able to see my screen now, and what you're seeing is what a life science GM would see, or a chief medical or quality officer. They may have many different clinics, many different regions of the country in their capture zone. They may want to focus on just a few of those. Choose cardiology and endocrinology clinics or some other specialty. Choose the specific types of patients, only diabetics, only dyslipidemia, but no history of heart attacks or strokes. This is a primary prevention look. We could choose whatever you want here, but it's customizable. Similarly, with social determinants of health, you could choose those as if you have them, but not necessary to get the results if that's what you're looking for. Once you've chosen the patients, you can then choose the evidence. What are the societies whose guidelines you want applied to your patient data? You can toggle on or off, depending on what region of the world you're in or what your preference is as a health system. You can also choose your own protocols that we can put in a custom fashion within a few weeks to layer on top of these guidelines, whether they be quality metrics or other treatment protocols that augment the guidelines. So once you've chosen your patients and your content, you actually get a dashboard that is somewhat rich, and I'll walk you through this, but there's the patients you chose in this top panel, and you've whittled down a 15,000 patient population to 1,900, and you're seeing the histogram of 10-year risk of heart attack or stroke in this population, but this could have been anything. It could have been body weight, LDL, any other parameter you wish. And you've mapped this patient data now through Clint into the guidelines to show you care gaps. What's shown here is that there are 1,000 patients of that 2,000 that should be on aspirin, but only about half are. About 1,500 patients should be on metformin, but only 1,100 are. These are care gaps in the population, all based off of guidelines and evidence. This is true for all of these different care centers, and if you drill down to one, you'll see individual patient names. These are not real patient names, just meant to show you the granularity of the data, but you're seeing a smaller population in this one clinic, and you're seeing 4 categories of care gaps: medications, lifestyle, workup, and follow-up gaps. And we have applied machine learning to model the impact of actually going ahead and executing those care gaps, closing those gaps, and shifting the risk of your curve to the left accordingly. You can see patients here also showing their individual risk reduction. And if you drill down to the point of care, this is where the power of our platform is that we started at the point of care and built upwards. So you're seeing one patient, a 49-year-old Indian woman. She has a moderate risk of heart disease, 6.1% in the next 10 years, but 2 of her risk factors she cannot change, her ethnicity and family history. But 3 she can. She could have a lower cholesterol, a lower blood pressure, and a lower body weight, but body weight is not that impactful. The blood pressure and cholesterol ratios are extremely impactful, and so therefore you can prioritize her interventions accordingly and track her risk over the last 2 years, going up and down based off the closure or relative openness of these gaps. They've done a good job with medications, but she needs more help on the other aspects of her care. And below, you can see the sources of these recommendations, which society, which best practice document. You can even drill down and see ethnicity lenses inserted here, where the World Health Organization has a lower BMI target for her than the general population. Once you've got all of this information, you may say, well, what's the take-home message? And we can generate from this a report. And if you're a pharma company, you may not care about everything under the sun. You may only focus on your one drug of interest, like Amgen's new diabetes drug compared to other diabetes drugs in diabetics over the age of 40 in this one part of Northern California. And then you get a narrative report that is basically reflecting care gaps of that population. So you may see that there are 855 care gaps. Most of these are medications in this cohort. And based on clinical trial data with statins and oral hypoglycemic agents, you may be able to reduce cardiovascular events over 25% or 28% or rather over the next 5 years. And this is, again, published clinical trial data. We'll also be able to show real world number needed to treat using our ACC real world data that goes back 10 years to model the same kinds of interventions in similar kinds of patients. And that may be more relevant for a health system. We can also model that graphically and show those real world impacts as well as the clinical trial impacts in these populations. Okay, so I'm going to kick it back over to the presentation and let Sushant share his screen again.
Thank you, Raj.
Sushant, are you able to take over the presentation here?
You need to make me the presenter? Great. I hope everyone can see my screen. So as Raj showed, the IP here is the combination of medical science with data science. So really the medical science is the prevention part, and the machine learning is the precision part. So the evidence, the medical science are the guardrails within which we can optimize on large data sets. So we filed 2 utility patents so far, and we're hoping to file more patents after this fundraising. So real quick, how does the machine learning work? So we're able to actually get lots of longitudinal data, lots of medical states that change over time, labs, encounters, things like that. And we can ask the question, in this particular encounter where the clinician is with the patient, what should be done? So we run the prescriptive part, the guidelines and best practices to say, okay, there are 10 recommendations for this patient, statins, lifestyle recommendations, referral, labs to do. And then we can ask for what are the kinds of patients who had this kind of medical state today and in the past. And we can actually get to what are the best set of actions or combination of actions to achieve the desired medical states. So this prescriptive and predictive parts of our platform are combined to be packaged into insights as a service. This is something that is an API that can be consumed from any healthcare entity, by any healthcare entity. And companies like Facebook are actually paying for this today for use. We also take this and use our own insights as a service on our Clint applications in the form of a report or a dashboard, as Raj showed you. So where are we today? So really, we're riding a wave of network effects, where as we collect more data, and especially longitudinal data, the more insights and the better insights we'll be able to provide and commercialize. So right now, we've generated 200,000 of revenue so far for 1 month of work from Facebook, and expect a couple or few more months of work from Facebook, as well as through the channel partnerships, the business partnership with the American College of Cardiology. They actually have life science companies that are paying $500K to $3.5 million, primarily for data and some services. And the pharma companies are asking for analytics on top of that. And that's where we come in to help them actually renew these deals, as well as to significantly increase the value of these deals. And so I've already sent in a couple of proposals to 2 pharma companies that ACC has as existing customers as renewals, and expect to sign on the 80 life science companies that ACC has as well. The third piece is actually working with international single payers right now outside the US. And these are for large deployments for entire states, countries, or private organizations. For example, Australia, where we've already sent in 2 proposals to Victoria, New South Wales. And these are very large deployments in the scale of, for example, 35 million, largely upfront for Victoria, and 45 million for New South Wales. So that's our go-to market and business model. In terms of our roadmap, we really, right now, are focused on EMR labs and registries. We're actually entering into the clinical trial realm with the project with Facebook, and are looking to significantly expand the kinds of medical insights that we actually look at as those become more mature, as well as there's a great market need for those. For example, social determinant of health, wearables, and exomics will become more important. And we really hope to provide actionable clinical context to all medical data in all healthcare entities in the future. Right now, we've raised 1.8 million so far, including 1.25 from Ilysys Capital, as Rajan mentioned earlier. And we're looking to raise a seed extension of 1 million to take our product from where it is today to world-class global scale product, scaling to 200 million patient life years, and to generate our first million and multi-million-dollar deals in the next 18 months. In terms of our growth opportunities, we think there's tremendous. Yeah, go ahead, Raj.
Yeah, so I can jump in here. Sorry, thanks. So in terms of analogous companies, the one that stands out as most similar to what we've built and are building is Flatiron. Flatiron is a also a data company that takes patient data and maps it into clinical trials that patients might qualify for, or clinical trials that have been done before, and was very attracted to pharma. They were acquired pre-revenue by Roche for 1.9 billion earlier this year, showing an appetite for the analytics companies from the pharmaceutical and life sciences sector. However, we've also received tremendous interest from technology companies. Facebook is already paying for our solution, but also in talks with Google Verily, Apple, and soon Amazon, all of whom have jumped into healthcare with a new data stream, one that may need mapping to evidence and an engine that can link the two together. And so, interestingly, they've acquired quickly. Apple did Glimpse, which provided health records onto your edge device. And also interestingly, Google Verily has hired away the VP of Roche Mergers and Acquisitions who oversaw the Flatiron acquisition. So we believe there's a significant appetite for companies in this space that HealthPals is in, but we believe we're the market leader right now in terms of mapping patient data into guidelines and evidence-based treatments and providing insights with the leverage of huge data partnerships like the ACC that set us apart.
So I know we have some time for a few questions, and we'd be happy to connect after this. You can reach us here or just reply to the email you got for the webinar. Alexa, Dan, have any questions?
Alexa, do you have any questions thus far?
Yeah, we have a few that have come in. The first question is the 1 million additional raise primarily to support operations or for sales growth?
Good question. So the main use of funds is going to be for product development, for software engineers and clinical informaticians. And some of the budget will be for sales and marketing, but largely it'll be for delivering on some of the contracts that we already have, as well as that we're going to sign up for.
Great, thank you. And then is this a share investment or a note investment?
This is a safe note, so it's with a 10 million valuation cap that we're offering. So the previous round was a priced round at 5 million. That was November 2016. Since then, we've actually made a lot of progress, revenue, commercial partnership with American College of Cardiology, as well as these international single-payer system proposals. And actually, this valuation cap was set before Facebook, but we're already close to about half the round, and we're offering the same valuation for other investors.
Okay, great. And then a follow-up question is safe with no interest?
Yeah, sorry, a safe with a 10 million valuation cap. There's no interest. It's not a convertible note. It's not a convertible note instrument. So there's no interest or discount. We think that 10 million valuation cap for either an exit or a Series A would be a significant discount on that.
But Sushan, just to clarify, but it is a convertible note to equity, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's just not technically a convertible note. Convertible notes need to have interest, but yes, exactly. So it will convert into either the next price round or towards an exit, acquisition, or IPO.
Right. Okay. I want to make sure listeners are clear on that.
All right, and then Dan, you had a few questions.
Yeah, there was one question, a couple of questions actually that came in. One is explain the interest and the difference of a Facebook or a technology company in general. You had mentioned that there's a big rush by the big technology companies into healthcare. Elaborate on which aspect of healthcare that they're rushing into, and what is it about HealthPals that can help them get there, or may serve to be an attractive acquisition, perhaps.
Raj, do you want to take this one? Otherwise, I can field this.
Yeah. So in terms of Facebook, for instance, they've had some, kind of well-publicized issues with data and security, we've been working with them on a non-user data aspect. They're very interested in facilitating clinical trials, and what that has allowed us to do is build a totally new but yet complementary and strengthening clinical trial capability on top of our guidelines. But they're really interested in that reach that they have. 80-some%, I think it's 85% of all clinical trials fail to meet their recruitment thresholds before they run out of budget to do so. And that's something that could be accelerated dramatically with trials that could be done remotely, trials that could be recruited remotely. And that's something where the reach of Facebook with 2 billion users is dramatic. And so that's something that we've helped them explore using our ability to identify suitable trials with patient attributes as the starting point, and how that maps into those types of trials. So that's been one example, but I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do beyond that with Facebook that we're not at liberty to talk about, but it's something very exciting that we're planning with them. In addition, Amazon, Apple, Google, they all have pieces of the pie, pieces of the puzzle, I guess, and they would like to complete that puzzle with grounding what they have in terms of insights with evidence. And so that's something that we're exploring with those discussions. But that's one example.
Yeah, and just to add to that, these tech companies, as well as existing companies like pharma companies, they all, like the pharma companies, they all have drugs or treatments that they have. They're part of a larger system. And so for them to be able to understand how do they push the adoption of these drugs or treatments into the market is the #1 question for a lot of these pharma companies. And with acquisitions like Flatiron, they really are putting their money where their mouth is and trying to solve that problem. And they realize that they can't solve the entire problem.
Thank you. Another question was, Raj, you mentioned that you're on staff at Stanford. Are you
Correct.
how much time are you spending on HealthPals, and can you elaborate on your future commitment?
Yeah. So Stanford, as some of you may or may not know, is fairly liberal with their policies and faculty, which is a wonderful thing. I just actually finished a sabbatical where I was full-time with HealthPals. It was a very productive period, and next year I'm now setting in motion the process to take a partial leave of absence where I would be partially clinically active, retaining my faculty position, but that would be a minority of my time. The vast majority would be on HealthPals. What we've found is that the impact of the faculty appointment is dramatic in terms of opening doors to some of the opportunities for the company, but time is also as, if not more valuable in terms of devotion to that mission, and that's been evident in this sabbatical, and that's what we're planning to build upon in a more substantial way next year.
Great, thank you. And one last question. It appears that you guys have made good progress, particularly on the generating revenue. You referenced some very large exits of companies that you cited as competitors or similar companies. What do you, as the co-founders, want to do with HealthPals? What is your timeline and horizon for growing and selling the company, and what would be a good outcome for you personally?
It's a great question. So what we're looking to do is make HealthPals successful at a large scale, whether that's a part of a larger company where we can leverage their existing vast resources, both money and people, is one path to do it. And so we're keeping our target is to raise significant acquisition options in the next 2 years. Most of the names are here, or many of the names are here, but also with the possibility of very large contracts where we could go the IPO route. So I think the next 18 months are going to be pivotal to see which one of those is going to we're going to point our arrow towards. But for example, the next 9 months will be actually putting in proposals for single payer systems worth upwards of $100 million. And so depending on the timing of those, of when they close, as well as the size, we will decide one way or the other. And the time horizon that we're looking at is the next 2 years for really pushing hard on one of those.
Great. And I just had more of a personal question I might throw out, Sushant. We have heard a lot about Raj's background, but talk a little bit more about your background and some of the companies that you've worked with, in what similarities in terms of high growth and potential exit that you've learned that you're bringing to HealthPals.
Absolutely. So the companies that I've worked at, none of them have been healthcare. This is my first healthcare startup, although I've done research in computational biology at Stanford. The startups I worked for have all been eventually VC backed and are poised towards grabbing a lot of market share in the ad tech, e-commerce, and analytics spaces. And really what I found is that it's the combination of a domain and deep technology that is a winning combination for properly positioning the company in the marketplace as something that can really add a lot of value and can be really unique and create a new market for the product. The second thing I found is to grow as fast as you can, but take money according to that. So it's also something we've followed. We've been pretty lean in the last 3.5 years and used up only $1.8 million so far. And we're asking for 1 million only because we need to bridge where we are today with some of this pretty high growth that's going to happen in the next 18 months. And I think that's crucial because once it really takes off, the capital needs will increase. And making that as customer funded as possible is essential. So I've seen both of those in previous startups that I've started as well as been an executive.
Great, thank you. Alex, any further questions?
That's it for tonight.
Okay.
Let me go to the how to invest page there. Just trying to get to that.
Well, great. Well, why don't we move to close? And I wanted to thank everybody for joining us this evening, and particularly thanks to Raj and Sushant, who've joined us for twice here in the last 3 hours, and Alexa for joining us this evening as well. I would ask Yuli if you have any final comments you would like to have regarding this company and investment. Why don't you make the final comments, and then we'll move to close. Thanks.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Ben. So one of the questions that came up was, why would a technology company be interested in something like this? We have seen in the recent news and also the trends where fee-for-service is converting to value-based care. And the way you deliver value-based care is you need to have solid data to make those decisions. For example, the recent Amazon getting into healthcare, they hired this top cardiologist to run their program, right? The goal for that company is to take their 1 million employees, make them as healthy as possible, cut down the cost, and improve the service. And that's a tall order if you think about it. So how do you improve service, cut down the cost, and also make them healthy? You need something like HealthPals to be able to do that, because in the long run, what happens is when you use a system like this, and we have seen that in Kaiser, is that you drop these bad outcomes, the rate of these bad outcomes, like the heart attacks, the strokes, the cancers, they go down. And that's how, Kaiser Permanente makes its money. And that's how anybody in the future who's looking to decrease the costs and improve the quality of care will need tools like this. And that's why I'm very excited about the timing of where we are right now with HealthPals. That's all for tonight.
Thanks everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and we hope to speak to you more.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.